¿Cómo van a sentarlos? ¿En qué orden?
Es que no sé cómo es que es el profesor Blanc, lo que sí sé que es la profesora Blanc, la profesora Melba y después aquí tenemos a la doctora Equilia, al doctor Fonten, de Claus en la universidad y el doctor Felipe del Centro para la Educación Internacional.
Ok, vamos con Melba entonces que nos diga.
Yo creo que no hay ningún problema. Sería Blanc, Melba y Oscar León.
Quedan los dos al lado de ellos.
Ya después se debe a la universidad afuera.
Ajá. Profa, vamos. Para sentar a la mesa principal. Muy bien. Doctor, por favor.
Bien, antes de iniciar, quisiera hacer un anuncio. Tenemos un vehículo de color rojo con matrícula AR 9221 que está estacionado en la parte posterior del edificio, que necesitamos remover para que un proveedor pueda estacionar y hacer entrega del pedido, por favor. Es un auto camioneta rojo con placa AR 9221. Bien, muy buenos días. Permítame saludar a la mesa principal. Nos acompaña el profesor Francisco Blanco, vicerrector académico de la Universidad Católica Santa María la Antigua. Doctora Melba Palacios de Mon, vicerrectora de Investigación y Extensión de la Universidad Católica Santa María la Antigua. Magíster Oscar León, rector de Quality Leadership University. Doctora Etilvia Arjona, del comité organizador de esta conferencia. También nos acompaña el doctor Peter Duncan, de Glasgow Caledonian University. Doctor Philip Halbach, del Centro para la Educación Superior Internacional de Boston College. Autoridades invitadas que nos acompañan en la mañana de hoy. Distinguidos ponentes magistrales, la doctora Maribel Duriez, la doctora Melita Kovacevic, el doctor Sergio Olavarrieta y doctora María Antonieta Rebel. Ponentes, invitados, distinguidos participantes, damas y caballeros, sean todos bienvenidos a la Conferencia Internacional Laurds, Perspectivas sobre Estrategias, Cultura de Investigación y Estudios Doctorales en América Latina. Esta conferencia es posible gracias a los aportes y patrocinios del programa Erasmus de la Unión Europea, la Secretaría General Nacional de Ciencia y Tecnología, CENACYT, y el municipio de la ciudad de Panamá, CIEDU Panamá, y la Universidad Católica Santa María la Antigua, conjuntamente con Quality Leadership University. Uno de los objetivos de este principal Congreso es desarrollar una hoja de ruta para integrar la estrategia y cultura de investigación y apoyo a programas doctorales como parte de las actividades institucionales para mejorar la calidad y sostenibilidad de la innovación y generación de conocimiento que contribuya al crecimiento económico de la sociedad de la región de América Latina. Laurds también busca construir la capacidad de universidades de América Latina para desarrollar su cultura de investigación y construir estrategias de investigación enfocadas y relevantes que apoyen a la necesidad de la innovación y generación de conocimiento en la economía. Esto resaltará el crecimiento de la economía del conocimiento de América Latina al profesionalizar actividades de investigación en torno a infraestructuras de universidades para alcanzar la sostenibilidad y la innovación. En estos momentos vamos a pedir al Magister Oscar León, rector de Quality Leadership University y miembro del comité organizador de esta conferencia, para que nos hable sobre los objetivos y aporte de esta conferencia al desarrollo de estrategias y cultura de investigación en nuestro país.
Muy buenos días. La verdad que es un verdadero honor estar acá frente a ustedes dándoles una cordial bienvenida a esta primera conferencia de perspectiva sobre estrategia y cultura de investigación y estudios doctorales para América Latina que organiza Laurds, que es the Latin American University Research and Doctoral Support Program. Por los pasados 2 años hemos estado trabajando con un grupo de universidades de Europa y Latinoamérica provenientes de Escocia, Alemania, España, Eslovenia, como también de Colombia y por supuesto de Panamá, en revisar cómo podemos ayudar a mejorar la cultura de investigación y las estrategias para que las universidades se inserten más en los temas de investigación, como también en promover más programas y de mejor calidad en áreas de doctorados, ayudando también a los diferentes tutores o mentores de estudiantes doctorales para que puedan ayudar a sus estudiantes en conseguir nuevas y buenas investigaciones. Quisiera resaltar el trabajo que hace nuestro universidad partner de Quality Leadership University, la Universidad Santa María la Antigua, y quiero agradecer el apoyo que hemos recibido de su rector, el ingeniero Planels, como también de las autoridades presentes acá de la USMA, el doctor Blanco y la doctora Melba de Palacios, sin quienes no hubiésemos podido tener éxito en este programa. A todo el equipo que ha trabajado en la organización de esta conferencia, y quisiera resaltar, y me voy a tomar un tiempo para los que tienen su programa, que vayan a la página donde está el equipo organizador, para pedirles que me apoyen agradeciendo el trabajo que por varios meses realizaron las siguientes personas. Del equipo de Santa María la Antigua, y voy a pedirle que se pongan de pie si están presentes acá, que se pongan de pie para agradecerles con un aplauso al equipo de Santa María la Antigua, Eti Arjona, quien es la coordinadora general de esta conferencia, a la doctora Melba Palacios, vicerrectora de Extensión, al doctor Luis Wong Vega, acá en la primera fila, director de investigación de la USMA, a la doctora Carmen Solano, investigadora y coordinadora también de este programa, por ahí tiene que estar, y al magíster Ricardo Reyes Betancur, también sin la ayuda de él no hubiera sido posible organizar esta conferencia. También del equipo de Quality Leadership University quisiera también que se pongan de pie las siguientes personas. Mariana León, vicerrectora académica de QLU. Ricardo Acosta, decano honorario de QLU. Andrea Miranda, coordinadora de investigación. Muy bien. A todo el equipo de comunicación de la USMA, que también está acá en su panfleto, entre ellos, bueno, voy a mencionarlos para que si están presentes se pongan de pie. Katia Baruco de Anaya, Betsy Ho, Carlos Andrés Guerrero, Michelle Flores, Ivonne Carrasquilla, Jessica Aguilar, Katia Ozón y Niels Reyes. Para ellos un fuerte aplauso, por favor. Y definitivamente queremos rendir honor y tributo y agradecer también el liderazgo del doctor David Edgar, quien no nos pudo acompañar debido a que tiene otra misión académica en Singapur, pero desde allá nos manda su saludo y éxitos para esta conferencia. También queremos agradecer a su mano derecha, el doctor Peter Duncan, también de Glasgow Caledonian University, por el arduo trabajo por 2 años. Y también quisiera agradecer a las universidades europeas que muy gentilmente han brindado su tiempo para ayudarnos a desarrollar diferentes herramientas y metodologías para mejorar nuestra investigación. Entonces, las universidades provenientes de Escocia, Alemania, España, Eslovenia, como también nuestros partners, la Universidad de Ibagué y la Universidad Unipanamericana de Colombia, que han trabajado arduamente por estos 2 años para que el resultado no sea simplemente esta conferencia. Ya más adelante ustedes se podrán dar cuenta en el programa, les estaremos presentando los resultados del trabajo que hemos hecho por 2 años. Y hay trabajo que se ha hecho que ha originado ciertas metodologías y herramientas que todas las universidades, que todos los investigadores, que todos los estudiantes de doctorando y que todos los profesores o mentores de doctorado podrán utilizar para enriquecer sus enseñanzas y su investigación en sus universidades. Y lo mejor de todo es que esta contribución que se está haciendo es gratuita para todas las universidades. Todas las universidades tendrán acceso al website donde están todas estas herramientas. Esto se ha logrado gracias también al apoyo de la Unión Europea y su programa Erasmus+. También, además de agradecer a Senacit por su patrocinio parcial de esta conferencia, quiero agradecer también el patrocinio de la Asociación de Universidades Privadas de Panamá, AUPA, como también del municipio de Panamá y también de CIEDU. Sin estas organizaciones no hubiésemos podido tener los fondos necesarios para poder realizar este evento gratuitamente, que esto es algo que ya casi no se ve, que cosas se hagan gratuitas, ¿no? Así que un aplauso para los patrocinadores, por favor. Wow, muchos agradecimientos. Finalmente quiero agradecer a todos aquellos que han tomado vuelos que son más de 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 horas de viaje para poder llegar a Panamá. Y quisiera tener una cuenta acá. ¿Quiénes vienen, por ejemplo, de Europa? Si se ponen de pie. Those that come from Europe. Can you stand up, please? Un aplauso para ellos. Son bastantes. Los europeos. Thank you for coming to Panama. We enjoy having you here, and we hope that you enjoy your visit and the conference, of course. Los que han venido de otros países de Latinoamérica, ¿se ponen de pie, por favor? Those who come from other countries of Latin America. Los latinoamericanos. Qué bonito, ¿no? Y esta es la idea, que en la hermandad que existe entre pueblos, que nos pueda dividir un océano Atlántico, que se dé tanta colaboración académica para generar excelentes resultados. Bien, ya después de haber agradecido, espero que a casi todos, siempre se me quedará alguien por ahí, por fuera, especialmente, por ejemplo, se me quedaban los international speakers, que también en una forma muy altruista han brindado su tiempo y han viajado desde muy lejos para brindarnos toda esa experiencia acumulada. Así que un aplauso también a nuestros speakers internacionales por acompañarnos en esta conferencia Latin American Research and Doctoral Support Program. Bien, ya habiendo agradecido y dándoles la bienvenida, quiero pedirles por favor lo siguiente. Tenemos un grupo ahorita, no sé cuántos podré calcular, habían 186 inscritos hasta el día de ayer, espero que se sigan incorporando más personas, pero también en honor y respeto a las personas que van a presentar sus diferentes investigaciones, les agradecemos que se queden con nosotros toda la distancia de estos 2 días que vamos a compartir, porque hay muy buena temática acá en el programa y nos gustaría que esta foto que estoy viendo acá frente a mí se mantenga hasta las 5 de la tarde del día de mañana. Así que, por favor, esperamos contar con su participación durante todos estos 2 días, que será bastante enriquecedor. Bienvenidos y muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, a usted, señor rector, por esas palabras de agradecimiento. En definitivo, todos hemos sido parte de esto como un gran trabajo. Bien, el proyecto Laurds nació gracias a la iniciativa y visión del personal docente e investigador de Glasgow Caledonian University, quienes se han dedicado incansablemente en la ejecución de este proyecto, buscando el mejoramiento de las áreas de investigación y estudio doctorales de la región de Latinoamérica. Le pedimos al doctor Peter Duncan, representante del proyecto Laurds, que nos acompañe y hable sobre los logros del proyecto hasta la fecha.
Buenos dias. Can you hear me okay at the back? Yep. Okay, here we are. As those of you who are involved in teaching will know, it's always quite exciting when you go to a new room and you have the technology, and sometimes it works. So it's going well. So my job in a way is quite straightforward, because you've already heard from my colleagues much about the project, who's involved, what some of the headline objectives were of the project. So I will go through this material, and it's just there to consolidate what has been said already. But I will say that my talk is in Scottish, so it's not in English. We have mountains, we have castles, and I've already spoken to a colleague who was in Edinburgh to see Edinburgh Castle. We have bagpiping. Have you heard of the bagpipes? Yeah, so I should make this offer because I'm amongst friends and colleagues. If tomorrow you would like to hear someone play the bagpipes, only if, then let me know. I have brought my bagpipes from Scotland. Okay? So, and of course, great export from Scotland, Andy Murray, a tennis player. If David was here, he would provide his insights, Professor Edgar provide his insights on the recent World Cup. So Panama, first time in the World Cup, did very well, but didn't beat England. But applause for Panama. Colombia in the World Cup. But didn't beat England. Scotland, not in the World Cup at all, so we won't say any more about that. And Soren, what happened to Germany? So Germany gave other people a chance to excel in the World Cup this time as well. So I've included that to show the community of nations, and also because football is a particular, how can I put it, a particular research interest of Professor Edgar, who I'm standing in for. Okay, we have the Lords team: Colombia, Panama, Scotland, Germany, Slovenia and Spain. And a group photograph there. And about fourth from the left in the blue shirt, that is Professor David Edgar, whose vision and hard work is what has put together the Lords project over the last 2 years. So I'd just like to give the acknowledgement and credit as Oscar did regarding David. So again, apologies, you've heard some of this already, and it's in English this time rather than Spanish. The key aspects of the project are around research culture, research strategies, doctoral supervision, and doctoral support. And of course, it's the intertwining, the interrelationship of these 4 dimensions which makes up the LORD project. And of course, those of us from Europe, we are here to learn from our colleagues in Latin America what you do regarding these areas. We are here to steal your ideas, your intellectual property around how you create effective research strategies, how you develop a research culture and support your doctoral students and supervisors. It's not, here's what we do in Europe and this is what you should do. Not in any way at all. It is a collaborative effort amongst all our partners and everyone here to see what would be a good things to do to help support culture, strategy, supervisors and students. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is that interaction and collaboration. Lots of key outputs, and as Oscar said already, the plan is that these key outputs will be available through the Lord's website and they will be free. In general terms, they will be free. So, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but we have a research strategy development roadmap. Where are you in terms of developing your research strategy? What could you do to enhance that research strategy? And in hand with strategy goes culture, organisational culture. So a toolkit for developing a research culture, one that supports, facilitates, rewards, enhances, develops research culture within a university, within an institution. We have programmes for supervisors, for students, some of which have already been piloted via our colleagues in Colombia and elsewhere. We will be producing 2 books which lead out from our conferences. We held a successful conference in Bogotá earlier in the year around doctoral supervision and student support. And of course we have this conference here around research leaders. So the idea is that as well as the conferences, we will create books to consolidate the good thinking that we have here. So that's where we are at the end, the Research Directors Conference. But it's really all about sharing knowledge, as I said, and building a community of scholars, community of ideas, community of friends and colleagues. How will we know if we've succeeded? Well, engagement from everyone, collaboration now and in the future, and sustainability for Lords and the ideas it represents. The project is due to end towards the end of this year. So we're looking for the good things that have been done through the project to go out into the wider world in Latin America and beyond and be sustainable. So I would ask you to get involved, to join the groups, use the materials, share ideas, feedback with us what worked, what hasn't worked, how we could enhance things. And a small bit of marketing, please go to our lords.org website, see what's there and register, and that will enable you to continue the discussion and to access the materials that we have created. So, I'll try some Spanish. Gracias a nuestros anfitriones, QLA and USMA, and getting harder now. Los deseamos una conferencia exitosa y atractiva. Scottish English and very poor Spanish. Thank you very much. Have a great time.
Muchísimas gracias, doctor Peter Duncan, por sus palabras. Bien, para continuar vamos a recibir a la doctora Melba Palacios de Mon, vicerrectora de Investigación y Extensión de la Universidad Católica Santa María la Antigua, quien en representación del ingeniero Juan Planel Fernández, rector magnífico, nos dará unas palabras de bienvenida a nuestra casa por los próximos días de esta conferencia.
Muy buenos días a todos. Gracias por estar aquí. Gracias especiales a los que han venido de tan lejos. De entre todos los países también se nos quedó uno, Estados Unidos. Nos acompaña el doctor Albach, ¿verdad? Que es, no es de Latinoamérica exactamente, pero de América. Muy bienvenido, que nos dará la conferencia a continuación. Como señaló Carlos, pues en nombre del rector Juan Planels, el ingeniero Planels está anda por Irlanda, ¿verdad? En una conferencia de universidades. Así que no nos ha podido acompañar hoy, pues, pero seguro está pensándonos y queremos darle la bienvenida a estas universidades. Esperamos que estos 2 días sean muy provechosos, que se mantenga el auditorio, como dijo el doctor León, ¿verdad? Y que, bueno, aprendamos todo de esta experiencia. Una distinción especial a la doctora Etilvia Arjona, que fue quien coordinó y conoció de este proyecto hace unos 3 años con la Comunidad Europea y entonces nos embarcó en esto, pues que ha sido un viaje muy exitoso. Así que muy complacidos y que la pasemos bien todos. Buenos días.
Muchísimas gracias, doctora Melba. Le damos las gracias a todos los participantes que han decidido dedicar estos 2 días a actualizar sus conocimientos en estrategias, cultura de investigación y estudios doctorales para el bien de nuestro país y de nuestra región. Esta actividad va a contar con 5 expositores magistrales, 2 mesas redondas, 19 ponencias concurrentes y más de 120 participantes inscritos. Estamos muy seguros de que esta conferencia internacional Laurds será todo un éxito. Bien, quisiera pedirle a la mesa principal que nos acompañen en las primeras filas para presentarles a nuestro primer conferencista magistral, y es el doctor Philip Halbach. Permítame presentarles. Él obtuvo su licenciatura, maestría y doctorado en la Universidad de Chicago. Ha enseñado en la Universidad de Wisconsin-Madison y en el State University de Nueva York. Hizo un postdoctorado y enseñó en la Universidad de Harvard. También fue director del Consejo Internacional, asesor de la Escuela de Posgrado en Educación de la Universidad de Shanghái, Jiaotong, y miembro del Comité Asesor Internacional del Higher School of Economics en Moscú. Profesor visitante del Instituto de Educación Superior de la Universidad de Pekín en la República Popular de China. También ha sido profesor visitante de la Escuela de Educación de Stanford y en la Universidad de Bombay en India. El doctor Halbach fue un experto en Fulbright en la India, Malasia y Singapur. Ha recibido premios otorgados por la Sociedad Japonesa para la promoción de las ciencias, el Servicio Alemán de Intercambio Académico, el Orwell Fellow en la Universidad de Hong Kong y un experto principal para el gobierno de Taiwán. Es profesor investigador y director fundador del Centro para la Educación Superior Internacional de CIE, de la Escuela de Educación de Lynch en Boston College. Hasta su jubilación en el año 2013, llevó la cátedra de profesor universitario Donald Jonan, CJ en el Boston College. En el año 2004 hasta 2006, fue el líder académico distinguido para la iniciativa del programa de Fulbright. Fue asociado principalmente en el Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Technique y ha sido editor de las revistas sobre educación superior y política educativa. Dentro de sus publicaciones más recientes está El camino a la excelencia académica, Haciendo universidades de investigación de clase mundial con Jamil Samil y el libro Guía Internacional de Educación Superior. Vamos a recibirlo, por favor, con un fuerte aplauso. Él nos hablará sobre retos y prospectos para universidades de investigación de clase mundial en países en vías de desarrollo.
It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I'm very pleased that our introductory speakers did not mention the United States, since the United States is currently withdrawing from the rest of the world, and to be honest, it deserves silence. So now you have my political statement. The rest will be academic. My job this morning is to provide you with a broad global view of research universities, because research universities are central, obviously, to the research mission of higher education, and you cannot have doctoral education without a good research university. So the context, the institutional context of what this program that you have been working on for the last couple of years is of central importance. I will also make the argument that not all universities should do research. Indeed, most universities in the world are not research-intensive institutions and should not be research-intensive institutions. Countries need to make careful, thoughtful, rational decisions about which universities should be doing research and which universities should not. Because, frankly, if all universities are doing research, most of them will be doing bad research, and most of them will be wasting the time and the money of the state or of the individuals who are studying there. I will discuss this a little bit more in a few minutes. This topic, of course, is quite central because the future of the global knowledge economy depends on research universities and actually also depends on the important work that you have been doing for the last couple of years, because doctoral training, the development of the next generation of scholars, researchers, and producers of research is central to this economy. And no matter what Mr. Trump or the Brexit people or others have to say about the unimportance of higher education, they're wrong. And we live in a globalized world, and especially for us in the sphere of higher education, that globalized world is central to everything we do. And at the very center of the globalized knowledge economy and higher education sphere are the research universities and are the people who do the doctoral training and the doctoral students. So what you are doing and what you are thinking about is of great importance, not only for you, but for the future of knowledge and the future of your economies. So please keep that in mind. You will notice that I am not this morning using PowerPoint. So you're going to have to listen and maybe take a few notes and hopefully not be looking at your iPhone and going back to a better time, maybe, in the way we communicate. That's an excuse for my being technologically stupid. Okay, so research universities are in many ways the most visible part of any academic system, but of course they're not the only part. I'll get to that in a few minutes. They are the institutions which educate the elite. I am not afraid to say elite. I hope I'm not talking about the kids of rich people, but I'm talking about the knowledge elite. I'm talking about young people who have the ability and the interest to pursue high-level study and research. And research universities are the institutions which should carefully choose those people and give them a good education. They should try as best they can to make sure also that their student body reflects the broader reality of society in terms of social class, gender, ethnicity, and so on. But the key in the research university sector is ability. And not everybody is suited for that. There are some countries, let me just mention Argentina, which has the general view that all God's children who pass the higher education exit examination can go to any university they wish. And what the Argentines do, and they are not alone, is they bring them in and they spit them out without completing their degrees. That's bad policy, and we could have a whole conference about that. In my view, and this is a big issue in France right now, selection is central to the research university. I'm not arguing that mass higher education is a bad thing. It's not. It's a good thing. And it's inevitable in every country. But I am arguing that that top level of institutions are different. They need to be organized effectively. They need to select their faculty and their students carefully to fulfill their mission. And that mission is of great importance, but it's not the only mission for higher education. The research universities are those that produce new knowledge and circulate that knowledge around the world, underlined. That is, it's no longer enough, as it once was, to be an institution in your own national environment. For a country like Panama, and in fact for most countries in Latin America, being nationally or even regionally centered is not enough. And indeed, if you look at Latin America, and I am not an expert on this part of the world, thus I am speaking to you in English, and I reflect tremendous detailed ignorance about almost all of the countries in this hemisphere. Nonetheless, research tells us that Latin America is indeed the least internationalized of the global regions. Latin Americans don't even talk all that much to themselves. And that is, I think, a problem for you. And especially for smaller countries like this one, the need to be internationally linked is of central importance. And it is the research universities that provide those links. And those institutions, not everybody in the country, but those institutions need to be involved with, interested in, devoting resources to internationalization in its various elements. There are some institutions here who are branch campuses of institutions elsewhere. There are some institutions here who have joint degree programs. All of these are symbolic of this international involvement, and that's, in my view, very important. Let me spend a few minutes on what I think are the central, essential characteristics of world-class research universities. These comments will relate to all countries, and you need to figure out how to translate these issues into the realities of your own institutions. They are discussed in more detail in my co-edited book, The Road to Academic Excellence, which the person who introduced me mentioned. It's available in Spanish, by the way, free, on the website of the World Bank, which published it a few years ago. We provide in it case studies, including several from Latin America, of successful, relatively new research universities. So these institutions have grappled with the few general points I'm now going to mention. There are three key ones. One is abundance and consistency of resources. You cannot have a globally successful research university cheap. Not possible. Not possible. Those resources can come from many places, mostly in global experience. They come from government, because most world-class research universities are still public institutions. There are a few that are private, and that number is growing. And the only two countries, actually, that have significant numbers of private research universities are the United States and Japan, which a century ago, in the US case more than a century ago, had a bunch of rich people who invested in private, not-for-profit higher education with great success. So you have the Stanfords and the Chicagos and so on, which are not very old universities. They're established at the end of the 19th century, and they became quickly world-class in the context of the 20th century because they had a lot of money. I like to tell the story of the University of Chicago, which I attended for all my degrees, which, by the way, this may not be a true story. When John D. Rockefeller, who gave all the money for the University of Chicago in 1895, was convinced to do this, he went to the president of Harvard and he asked, how can we create in Chicago, an odd place, a world-class research university, he didn't call it that, quick? And the president of Harvard said, $500 million and 500 years. He was wrong on both. Rockefeller and the founders, the academic founders at Chicago, created in 30 years the university in America that was in the United States that was giving the biggest number of PhDs in the world in 30 years. But it cost them, in equivalent of that time, it cost Mr. Rockefeller $2 billion in today's money. So not cheap. And there are other amusing examples I don't have time to go into here. So you need money. Most of it will come from government in most countries. Some of it will come from tuition fees. Free tuition, again, the topic for another conference, generally speaking, is not a good policy. And there are lots of reasons for that. A number of countries still have free tuition. The Germans have gone back to free tuition recently, and there's big debates among economists about that. My own view, tuition fees are important, with scholarships and with ways of making sure that people who cannot afford can go. And research grants. Research universities must have external support as they go on for the kind of research they do. They cannot do it based on their own internal funding. And those research grants in most places come largely from public sources, from government at different levels, but they also come from philanthropic foundations in many countries. They come from industrial, commercial companies, biotechnology industries, and so on. And if you look in the ecosphere of Boston, where I come from, and how research, which is booming in that area, how it's funded. It's funded from a large variety of different sources, some local, some commercial, some governmental, all of which come to the universities, which then do the research. So you have to have abundance and consistency of resources. It's very interesting, and I don't have time to go into much detail. There are several graduates of Stanford University here in this room. That university was started by the Stanford family. They own railroads. Unlike Chicago, they didn't give their money consistently. So Stanford started with great success and collapsed for a number of years. It got back on its feet, and it is what it is today. But it took them longer. The world's first, America's first research university is near Boston. It's called Clark University, which nobody here ever heard of. A rich guy started it in 1874 and went broke. Clark is still there, but it's not a research university. Okay, so you need money. You need, very importantly, favorable governance. Favorable governance. Underlined. That is, you need a structure of the university which is going to provide both leadership, and that leadership will come both from the faculty members and from the senior administration. And hopefully that senior administration will not be appointed by government, but from within the institution. I happen to serve now on the Russian government's Excellence Commission. It's quite fascinating. We, 10 of us, 5 internationals, 5 Russians, are giving away every year $300 million US equivalent to 24 Russian universities that we selected, wanting to bring them up to world-class standards. And this is in a country that has a rich academic tradition. Russian universities during Soviet times and even before were quite good, many of them. They had problems after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the Russian state is trying to build them up. And I am part of that process. It's fascinating. One of their big problems is all of the rectors in all of the public universities in Russia are appointed by the government. So we're trying to convince them, and we have almost done so, that they should not do that anymore. It even goes so far that the rectors of Moscow State and St. Petersburg State, the sort of top institutions, are equivalent to members of the cabinet of the government. By the way, same thing for Peking University and Tsinghua in China. So you need governance. You need it free from government interference. You need leadership in a strong administration. You can't just let the faculty dominate everything, as is the case in many Latin American universities and European ones too, where rectors are elected for often on a political basis for a relatively short term and can't do anything. They're either know they're going out of office or they're worrying about getting elected next time. Not good. You need faculty authority, faculty independence, but not faculty control. Difficult to do, but not impossible. Most top U.S. universities, traditionally, many British universities have done that with great success. You need academic freedom, central to governance and central to research. And you can ask the question, again, the topic for another fascinating conference, which we should organize. Can you have research universities with limited academic freedom? You can take examples from China, which, by the way, in terms of academic freedom, is at the present time going backward. But they have achieved significant success in the sciences in that context. They don't do very well in the social sciences and humanities, which, in my view, is important for broad knowledge of any society. Singapore, which I know people in Panama are constantly looking at, also has, generally speaking, academic freedom, but limited in some ways. So it's a contested area. But overall, you need academic freedom. And you need concentration of talent. Again, underlined. You need research universities, in my view, all universities, but especially research universities, need to be meritocracies in the selection of students, in the selection of faculty, in the selection of administration. You want the best people. And increasingly, you want them from a global environment. So, and again, the rankings, the international rankings now give credit to institutions that have significant numbers of international students and international faculty. They recognize that meritocracy is important and internationalization is part of that. They need the top students, and they need to select them in a fair way, but in a way that will get them the best and the brightest. They need the best teaching staff, and they need, as I mentioned, an international outlook. I have time for a few more, I think, important points. My basic argument is that all countries need at least one research-oriented university as a window to the wider world of science and scholarship. On the one hand, even small countries should not give up. They are part of the global economy too. And although my ignorance of Panama is profound, having spent less than 24 hours in this country, maybe now 24, I always say, if I spend a day someplace, I'm an expert. If I spend 2 days, I know nothing at all. So I'm in the expert stage. So I can say for Panama, your economy, as it's emerging, even though it's a small country, requires involvement with the global knowledge economy. It doesn't mean that that any university in Panama is going to rank highly on the international rankings. Indeed, if you have that as a goal, if your government or any of you have that as a goal, you will fail. You will fail. There are very, very few countries, Singapore is one of them, by the way, where small countries, Switzerland also, Singapore, Switzerland, and the Netherlands are the 3 most successful countries in the world in terms of the proportion of their universities that rank in the top, I think, 100 of any of the global rankings. But they've spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and there are particular circumstances. So, but I do believe that Panama and other countries need at least one research university. You probably need 1, not more, not less. You know, how many does Chile need? I don't know. It's a bigger country, 2 or 3. But my point is, decisions need to be made that will put the resources, human and financial, into that institution or small group of institutions that will permit them to be successful. And if you don't make that decision, you will not succeed. It would be very difficult. Now, in Latin America, 2 or 3 countries have more or less succeeded. Chile is one of them. Brazil is another one. And by the way, it's not Brazil, it's the state of São Paulo that has invested heavily in higher education, and they have, over time, succeeded. The country hasn't. So you need something, but you don't need everything. My concern here is that research universities in developing and middle-income countries, a special category of institutions, face special challenges. Their challenges are not the same as the Harvards and the Oxfords of this world, and they need that careful attention needs to be given to them specifically, and overall, it hasn't. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why a conference like this one is important, where you're thinking about the specific problems that face this category of countries. In our particular case in the Latin American context, but you could do this in Africa or you could do this in most Asian countries. Let me make a few more comments about the general aspects of research universities that I think are important to think of. Research universities are a relatively recent invention. They stem really from von Humboldt's reform of the University of Berlin in Germany in 1818, which was later refined both in Germany and in the United States, and then adapted in the rest of the world. The people who were designing the University of Chicago, Stanford, Hopkins, and other American universities that became top research universities looked to Germany. No question about that. So too did the people at the University of Tokyo a little bit afterwards. So research universities are relatively recent phenomena, and they come from this German tradition. And the idea was to harness science and scholarship to national development. The Germans, when they invented the research university, wanted to use it for the national development of a German state and of German industry. They looked across the English Channel to the UK, which was leading the Industrial Revolution. And by the way, the Industrial Revolution in England did not depend on the universities. The universities were back in the 15th century, Oxford and Cambridge, which were the main ones, and they wouldn't change. And what happened is they got left behind until later they suddenly woke up and started to change. But it was the University of London and the University of Manchester, and maybe in Scotland, where they were involved in the Industrial Revolution in England. Well, the Germans looked and said, we want to do this quickly, we want to develop, and we have a new idea, and that was to use the universities, and that's what they did. So the research universities have never been simply science for its own sake. They've always been development related, and that goes back to the beginning of the institution. Research universities are also inevitably part of a differentiated higher education system. I mentioned this earlier on, but I really think it's quite a central point, especially maybe for Latin America. That is, countries need to make what are clearly difficult decisions about how an academic system is going to look and how it's going to function together. My favorite example of the success of such a system is what we call the California Master Plan. It could be that some of you in this room are graduates of California public higher education, and you have benefited from such a differentiated system, because in 1960, the Clark Kerr, who invented the system, put together an idea that linked community colleges, the California state system, now about 30 campuses, and the University of California system. They just added one. It's about 14 campuses with very different missions. For example, Cal State universities were, until quite recently and controversially, not allowed to have doctoral programs. Not allowed by state law. Only the University of California campuses could do that. And the idea there was to make sure that all the California campuses wouldn't look the same. They would serve different missions. Another key aspect, very important and often ignored, is the fact that this system is articulated. That is, a student who enters even a community college in California, and anyone with a high school degree can go to a community college. You don't need an entrance exam. But anyone who goes there can transfer up to Cal State or even to Berkeley or UCLA. And in fact, significant numbers do. Not most, but significant numbers. So you've got, by law, articulation. So, unlike in the German system, and I'm sure our German colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, where you go does not mean necessarily where you finish. If you have the ability and the interest, you can transfer up, which means people have more choices. And the initial decision about where to go for higher education does not determine the rest of your career, either academically or in the system. So it's very important to have a system. It doesn't need to look like California, because you can see around the United States, most states now have some kind of system. they look occasionally like California, sometimes different, but they all do the same, more or less the same thing. And other countries are moving in that direction. And you have to do that because all universities cannot be research institutions. All universities shouldn't be. And if you leave it up to the university, they will all be research universities because that's where the prestige is. So this takes care. And of course, higher education in a massified system has been worrying for quite a while about quality assurance. That is not the topic of this conference. And by and large, it's not an issue at the doctoral level, but it is an issue for systems. And countries need to have a good quality assurance arrangement. The American one actually works pretty well, although lots of people are now criticizing it. And you can look at some other countries where quality assurance is pretty effective. And you can look at many countries, including a number in Latin America, where quality assurance isn't very effective, either for reasons of politics or for reasons of overcomplication. Because if you make it too crazy, too difficult, oftentimes it ends up not working all that well. So if you think about the number of research universities that exist around the world, their number is actually, real research universities, their numbers are really pretty small. Think about the United States. We have about 3,300 post-secondary institutions in the country. Of that number, maybe 200 are real research universities. The members of the Association of American Universities, which is the self-appointed organization of the research universities, they decide themselves who's going to join, and they're very conservative about adding new ones, but they do, and usually their decisions are pretty good. So you've got about 140 of those AAU members, and you have a modest number of additional universities that are real research universities, but not AAU members. For example, my own institution, Boston College, do not confuse it with Boston University, please. Both private universities in Boston. But Boston College does not have a medical school and does not have an engineering school. But we are ranked in the U.S. News rankings, 32, I think, among the top research universities in the United States. So we're there, but we don't quite fit the image. So you have to keep that in mind. But my point is that research universities are a small part even of big, rich, successful academic systems, and that's important to keep in mind. We do have in the United States the ability for private universities to sort of become research institutions if they have the resources, the money, and the talent to do that, and there are a small number of examples that have achieved that. And we have the possibility for public institutions, if they have a very convincing political and economic argument, to be supported by their state governments to also become research universities. And there's some very interesting examples. The University of California at San Diego, which was a new institution in the 1960s, has become a world-class research university with the investment of a lot of money by the state of California and other favorable circumstances. Well, what I have tried, let me conclude with some of the challenges that I think face research universities now. There is a debate everywhere, whether publicly or just under the table, between the idea of the public good and the private good, as the economists put it. That is, do universities serve the broader public, or are they institutions which serve the people who graduate from them only, that is, the private good? And the argument, of course, is that if it is a public good institution, the state should support it, should get government money, and it should serve broader goals. If it's a private good institution, the students should pay the money, and the government doesn't need to bother too much. That's a very nice argument in a period of mass enrollments and government cutbacks. The problem is, for the research universities, they are public good institutions. There is no question about that. They are serving a broader research mission and the broader society, and if you think of them as private good, they will not do well. Similarly, the broader privatization of public higher education in many countries, the United States significantly in this field, in all of the 50 U.S. states, the budgets for public higher education in the last 15 years have gone precipitously down, and that's not only because of the recession that occurred, but it's part of a broader social political trend. So that means that the universities, the public universities, have become more and more privatized. They charge higher tuition. They're organized more on for the goal of earning enough money to continue. Some countries, Australia is my favorite example, has cut the public budget for higher education drastically and relies on international students and internationalization for their budget. And this, in my view, is really a terrible focus for how higher education should operate. But more broadly, the privatization of public higher education is a serious issue. I don't know how this works in Latin America. I suspect you may have similar issues. But for research universities, it's a disaster. The commercialization of research, which is a growing trend everywhere, puts strains on the traditional research paradigms, methods, orientations of the research universities. Some research universities, the University of California at Berkeley, famously a few years ago, got in very big trouble with a pharmaceutical company concerning intellectual property. And so we have increasing difficulties with the control of intellectual property, the use of intellectual property, the funding of research, and the commercialization of research. In an era of accountability, research universities particularly need autonomy. Yes, they're subject to the government who funds them in many ways, but they need to have autonomy in the decisions which they're making about the direction of academic programs, the orientation of their research, and other things. And that becomes a harder sell in this era of accountability, often false accountability, because you've got government agencies which either don't know what they're doing, many, or are corrupt, some. So accountability becomes difficult. The globalization of science makes it difficult for research universities in peripheral countries, much of Latin America, to do well. How do you function when science is a global topic, and when it continues to be dominated by the guys in the rich countries who have more money, who have more facilities, who suck up the talent, both faculty and students. So this becomes a problem. Research universities are not challenged by competition from for-profit providers. For-profit universities, I think with no exceptions anywhere in the world, are aiming toward being research universities. You can't make money doing that. So they are not in this game. And my final little point, and one that you need to worry about in this room and in this region, is the role of global English. Here I am, speaking to you, not in Scottish, or some kind of English that sounds like Scottish, but in proper Midwestern American English. And very few of you are using your headsets. So you are Englishized in some ways. And that, maybe I'm sorry to say, is inevitable, because English is the global language of science. That does not mean that English needs to be the global language of instruction. And the decisions that universities make about offering degree courses in English, in non-English speaking environments, these are difficult decisions. I know in my experience with the Russians, Russian universities offer increasing numbers of both master's and bachelor's courses in English, largely to Russian students, because they don't have that many international students, and the ones that they have come from the former Soviet Union, where everybody speaks Russian still, anyway, Kazakhstan and such places. Yet, the Russians think it's important, and they have a market in their country for young Russians who want to have programs in English. So these are difficult questions. And again, it's the topic for another interesting conference on how to make these decisions in a rational way and permit you to leverage the global language of science on the one hand and not lose your linguistic patrimony on the other hand. And I don't have a good answer to that question. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I have tried to do in these 44 minutes is to give you a sense of the global picture, because I think that the rest of the content of this conference depends in many ways on how we fit into this global academic environment. Many of the things which I've said, no doubt, you know, because it's your lived experience. But many of us, like the fish swimming in the ocean, we don't think about the ocean very much because we're too busy swimming around and trying to avoid being eaten by the other fish. So with that, I thank you.
Muchísimas gracias al doctor por habernos presentado este tema sobre los retos y prospectos para universidades de investigación de clase mundial en países en vías de desarrollo. Vamos a abrir un compás para poder efectuar 3 preguntas porque el tiempo nos apremia y quisiera entonces pedirle al público, quien desea hacerle a favor, levantar la mano.
Son dos.
En español, correcto. Muchas gracias, doctor. Lo haga en español, ¿no? Mario Jaramillo. I'm a professor at QLU. I'm a U.S. prepared universities. I'm a master's. In Panama, some of the people that I see here have, for years, tried to do this research venture universities. One thing that we found that was a problem through COSPA, this private Center for Educational Development, which joins all the private enterprise, was that the private enterprise would contract or get universities to do research on different things, new products, new ways of distribution, new markets, all the research. First, didn't trust that the universities would do it on time. Second, what you talk about, the confidence, the secret. And third, the quality. So we started with doing different things, Fundación Universidad Empresa, University, all these things, but still we do not get that much interest or confidence, trust on private enterprise, big companies that we have, to hire universities to do research instead of going them and spending their own way, bringing people from other countries that are to do research. Is there anything you can recommend to us as both academic and private enterprise to overcome this?
This is a very complicated and interesting question. It's true everywhere that companies find it sometimes difficult to work with universities on research because universities and professors have their own schedule, their own interests. We are often more interested in many ways, as we should be, in writing articles that can get in top journals than we are in producing applied knowledge. So there is a kind of a conflict there. However, many universities, and I think now of the Boston area, which does where the universities themselves do it, and we do it also as a region, have organizations and individuals within the universities which are involved with convincing companies and convincing our own faculty that we have a particular job and we're getting money to do this, and we have to produce it in a way that will be satisfactory both to us and to the companies. And it's kind of a negotiation. It's not just the universities giving up and saying, okay, we'll be like company research labs, telling the companies, we have our own culture and we're going to give you a quality product, but you have to also compromise with us. And that's worked out often quite well. Now you have to have, on the university side, the brain power to deliver, and also the ability of the administration and of these committees which relate to the companies, the ability to beat people on the head sometimes and say, we got to do it, we have to deliver. So it's not easy. And in many, I would say most universities in most countries don't do it very well. Again, the Russians are very interested in this, and a few of their universities that have a long tradition of working with particular industries in Russia, particularly oil and gas and the nuclear, do very well in that area. Others less so. One of our universities is in St. Petersburg. It's a really innovative university dealing with information technology, and I hate to think what they're doing at the moment.
Thank you. That was a great talk. Coming back to your issue of concentration of talent and the challenge that that poses for a lot of these small middle-income countries, and the need for global composition within that structure. Could you talk a little bit about some of the regional hub models that are trying to actively pursue and propel that in developing regions, and a little bit about which ones you see as being more successful and why?
Also a very complicated question. I can't think of any examples where regions get together and say, okay, we're going to have our knowledge hub in a particular place, because everybody wants it in their own place. Now, some countries have invested heavily and have done a very good job of creating for themselves a regional hub, not with the help of their neighbors, but in competition, frankly, with their neighbors. Again, Singapore is, particularly since it's well known to many people here, very successful in that respect. I'm trying to think of some others. Some parts of the United States, again, Boston, Silicon Valley area in California, Chicago to some extent, have done that, sucking knowledge, talent from the whole country and the whole world to do that. And you have to follow my advice. You have to invest, build the terms and conditions, provide the salaries, permit scholars, researchers to be able to function in a kind of a entrepreneurial way for themselves, whereas still being part of an academic community, to make that work properly. But there are no examples that I can think of where countries have gotten together. I wish I could say there were, because I think this is the way to go, particularly in regions maybe like this one, where it's obvious that everybody can't afford a top research university, and it would be better to have one serving a number of countries, but would you let the Nicaraguans have it? And would they let you have it? Very unlikely. Where in China, a very big country, they have, by government edict, done that in some parts of the country, and there's some pushback because in Shanghai and Shenzhen, near Hong Kong, some of the other sort of hubs, mainly those two, they have done such a good job of sucking up the talent from every place else that much of the rest of the country is being left without this kind of research capacity. And they don't like it. But maybe unfortunately or fortunately, they can't say too much about it. So the short answer to your question is, regionally, no examples.
Dr. Albach, I will ask you a non-complicated question. This will be an easy question for you. But I want for you to tell us, and you said in your conference that you want to elaborate more about it, and please do. Send us a message, especially for the accreditation agency here in Panama, the CONEAUPA, el Consejo Nacional de Evaluación y Acreditación Universitaria de Panamá, who accredits the universities locally. What you said about that not every single university should be dedicated to research or should be intensive research university. Particularly if some of the regulations of accreditation ask every single university, even though they may dedicate themselves to the arts, to, for example, to publish papers in academic journals, significantly prestigious academic journals, to do an academic research conference every year, and to produce patents. So what is your message to that accreditation agency, even though I'm a member of that conference?
To be very undiplomatic, this is the stupidest thing I ever heard. Maybe not quite. But it's not practical, you know. You're well aware of that. And it takes, I know in this region, in Latin America, there's lots of kind of regional discussions about quality assurance. And some very good ideas and some very smart people who are thinking through these questions. And there needs to be some really hard thinking about exactly how accrediting agencies should work. I know from a colleague of mine who does a lot of consulting in this region that she is continually upset about the overcomplicatedness of the regulations that countries put into place. Peru is a very good example. All I know is what she tells me of that. But, you know, somebody needs to get real, practical, about what can be done in terms of quality assurance and accreditation and what can't be done. And the more you can involve, it takes a culture. I'm thinking now of the American system, which, by the way, I think is a very good system over a long period of time. But it's taken 100 years to develop the ethos, the idea of how it should be done, and the respect from the institutions, from the academic community, and from the government. By the way, the government is now losing that respect, and that's a huge problem in the U.S., to develop an accrediting system that I think is that works pretty well, and involves the institutions significantly. So I don't have a good answer other than to say this particular policy is amazingly stupid and just inappropriate for the institutions that exist in the country, in any country. You know, one size does not fit all. And the particular size that they seem to have chosen fits only a very few institutions properly. But I say this, and I hope there are no people from the press here. I say this based on few facts other than what I hear from you and my general views.
Muchísimas gracias, doctor Philly Albach, por su presentación. Bien, damas y caballeros, vamos entonces a pasar al refrigerio que va a contar de 30 minutos. Por favor, le pedimos a todos estar puntualmente para poder seguir de nuestra programación. Muchísimas gracias.
Si necesito... Dale, yo me encargo de Maribel. Para la presentación de ella. ¿Cuál es Maribel? Spanish.